Right, everybody, welcome to the anniversary Q&A, a sort of live version of Mingles with Jingles. For the benefit of anybody who's watching this on YouTube, you missed it. For the benefit of everybody who is actually here in the audience, all at the moment 81 of you, welcome. Big thanks to Grump Salty on the Salt Mines Discord server who suggested and organised this whole thing, and thank you to everybody who posted questions. I cannot guarantee I'll be able to answer all of them, but I'll have a damn good try. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be putting this up on YouTube for Monday in lieu of Mingles with Jingles. So I guess howdy folks, and welcome to a live version of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you're all having a great weekend. If you're watching this on YouTube, I hope you all had a great weekend. And given that this is technically sort of an impromptu version of Mingles with Jingles, there's a couple of things that I wanted to get out of the way before we start and crack on with the questions. The first is, it's been 7 months since I had a holiday. I haven't had any time off since Christmas. So I'm going to be taking at least a week off. Don't worry though, as I'm sure you're all aware, I'm as crap at taking time off as I am at everything else that I do. So there will always certainly be videos going up on an irregular basis over the course of the next week or two. The other thing that I wanted to talk about before we crack on with the questions, and technically this is actually a question, because it was posted here on the Salt Mines Discord server in the Mingle with Jingles channel. I can't remember who it was. Are you aware that classified Challenger tank specifications have been leaked online for War Thunder? Has everybody heard about that? I don't know why I'm asking. You can't answer. Or you can, but it's going to be text only. Quick one about this. So if you haven't heard the story, somebody who apparently works, is not necessarily in the British Army, but if he may be, but he definitely at least works for the British Army, was a bit upset with the way the Challenger was modelled in War Thunder, and so he posted kind of like the classified Challenger user manual and sent it to Gaijin, who are a Russian company. Yeah, so he claimed that it was unclassified. Here's the thing, you need to understand how security classification works in British, not just the military, but government as well. So there are various different grades of classification. You start off at unclassified. And it's not okay to leak unclassified stuff, but you're not really going to get into trouble for doing it. The next grade up is restricted. Then you get confidential, then you get secret, then you get top secret, and then there's all kinds of classifications above top secret, but they are so classified that you need a security clearance to even know what the names of those classifications are. So the document that he leaked was apparently classified restricted, which is the lowest security classification that it's not okay to reveal. But it's still not okay to reveal it, and he apparently on the document he kind of like just scrubbed out where it said restricted and stamped unclassified on it. The Ministry of Defence has confirmed that these documents are actually still classified restricted. Gaijin want nothing to do with it because they don't want to get into trouble. And while the identity of the person who leaked the documents has not yet been revealed, he's given enough information that it's probably not going to be difficult to find out who he is. So he is in the shit. If you break the Official Secrets Act, you can get up to 14 years in prison. Although, this may surprise you to hear, most people in the British military cannot be, what's the right word, put on trial, prosecuted under the Official Secrets Act because they haven't signed it. They're not privy to classified information, so there's no need for them to sign the Official Secrets Act. However, if this guy had access to restricted user manuals, he probably has, so yeah, he's in the shit. Anyway, that out of the way, let's crack on with the questions. I'm going to slip over to the questions for Jingles channel, and we're just going to pile on through them and try to get as many answered as we possibly can. So scrolling back up to the start. This one's from Brent D15. Jingles, are you excited that Derflinger is coming to World of Warships? The Derflinger is was it a Dreadnought class battleship or a battle cruiser? I'm quite ashamed to say that. I don't know exactly what the Derflinger was, but I know it took part in the Battle of Jutland. So I'm not entirely sure about this new line of German battleships / battle cruisers. They're they're supposed to be, strong secondaries, not particularly great primaries. And well, you've seen what happened with the commander skill rework, and then the rework of the commander skill rework, and then the upcoming rework of the commander skill rework. Secondaries were fun to play on ships like the Grosser Kurfürst, ships like the Massachusetts, but they did definitely get nerfed, where they weren't as effective and they required more skill points to, get back to almost where you were before the various different skill changes. The new skill change that's coming out, the rework of the rework of the rework, is addressing this. But while the new secondary skills are an overall buff, I mean, it used to be nice and simple in World of Warships. Do you remember the days when you would pick a skill and you'd look at the skill description and you'd know what it did? 65% buff to the accuracy of your secondaries, tier 7 and above. Done. And now it's like, well, it's 10% here, and then after a while it becomes 75% here, and then if you stop shooting it drops, and basically on the second Tuesday of every month you might be as accurate as you were before, and the game makes no effort whatsoever to let you know when these buffs are actually in place and active. I miss the days when the questions were a lot more simple. When the skill descriptions were just a lot more simple, and they just seem to be unnecessarily complicated now. So am I excited? Not really excited. I'm curious to see how they're going to perform. I'm not expecting great things, but we'll see. Next question came from Yamatog2. I like that name. Combining the two best things in the world. I know it's people are furiously typing away. I hope I can get down to all of your questions before we call a day on this. But he says, Jingles, if you could save one warship from either sinking or being scrapped from every major World War II navy, which one would you pick from each nation and why? I think this is a great question. Obviously, for Japan, it would have to be the Yamato. I mean, there can be no other. For the British, it would be the Warspite. Because, famously, I love the Warspite. And while she survived the war, she wasn't sunk, she was towed away to be broken up. You may have heard that the good old girl decided that she didn't want to be broken up and slipped her tow lines and ran herself aground rather than be dragged off to the breakers yard, where the Royal Air Force spent the next week unsuccessfully trying to sink her. Because, Royal Air Force. For America, the US Navy, they've done a remarkably good job of preserving a lot of their historical ships. But if I had to pick one historical US Navy ship that didn't manage to see it through to the end of the war, that would have to be the USS Johnson. The Fletcher class destroyer that tried to sink the Yamato and the Yamato's entire task force at the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Captain Evans famously deciding that, screw it, we're here to defend these escort carriers, we're going to defend these escort carriers, and just drove his tiny little destroyer straight into a force comprising of the Yamato, half a dozen other battleships, heavy cruisers, about 30 destroyers, and inspired the rest of the tiny escort group from Task Force 3 to do the same. Didn't survive, of course, but survived way longer than anybody expected him to. So I'd have to say yes, the USS Fletcher. Not Fletcher, sorry, Johnson, which was a Fletcher class destroyer. As for the Germans, I know everybody's expecting me to say the Bismarck, but I actually think the Scharnhorst was a far sexier looking ship. And while it suffered the same fate as the Bismarck, I would preserve the Scharnhorst because that ship is sexy as all hell. So who else am I missing? Major World War II Navy. Well, that rules out the Russians, despite what World of Warships would have you believe. I think that just about covers it. Moz has said, Jingles, which of the countries that were in the British Empire would you live in? I have lived in a couple of countries that were in the British Empire. South Africa, for example, Swaziland. Unfortunately, I don't do well with the heat. So if I was going to pick some place that was in the British Empire, that would rule out places like India, Ceylon, which was known as Sri Lanka back when it was in the British Empire. I'd probably have to go for New Zealand because it's got a reasonable climate and, great culture. You're welcome, Grumper. Yeah. Plus, who wouldn't want to live in Middle Earth? I'm just going to quickly scroll down and see what's happening in the. My wow, you lot have definitely been busy in chat here. Part of Taffy 3. Yes, Aki Aki. All right, anyway, back up at the top of the questions. So where are we? Let's see. Here we go. Ah, Massive Simp. Thoughts on Sabaton? You know what? Originally, I didn't think much of them. Right, this just illustrates how badly informed I am. Right, I thought that Sabaton were just a Swedish thrash metal band, like a death metal, which is as far from the truth as it could possibly be. and and it wasn't until I was at Gamescom several years ago when Sabaton came out and performed for World of Warships that I actually heard their music, and they are really good. They're ooh, I might be upsetting a lot of Australians here, but they kind of, I know they don't sound the same as AC/DC. AC/DC have a very sort of bluesy rock style. Um, but the way their music is arranged, but the simplicity of the musical arrangement, but they managed to write really catchy, simple tunes at the same time. Reminds me a lot of AC/DC, and I'm actually very impressed with Sabaton. I can't believe it took me so long to actually listen to them. But yeah, they are very, very good, in my opinion. Axel Zero wanted to know, would I consider making a Final Fantasy XIV group for the Salt Mine for us all to play together? Um, I'm not entirely sure what he means by group, whether he means on the Discord server or whether he means like a guild in game. I'm very, very new at Final Fantasy XIV. I still don't. I mean, I understand a lot of the concepts, but they have different terms for things in that game that they do in just about every other, excuse me, every other game. Like a group of players in just about every other MMO is called a guild, but I think they call them free companies in Final Fantasy XIV. So yeah, it can be difficult. Even if you understand the concepts, they don't always use the same terms to describe them. If that's the case, I don't see a problem with organising a guild in Final Fantasy XIV, which you would, of course, all be welcome to join. I'll get onto that. Captain English, Jingles, do you ever plan to do something in cows about I never know how to pronounce the name of this ship. It's the Polish Tier 7 destroyer, the Błyskawica. It means lightning in Polish, I think. I'm sure it does. It is just across the Solent. Yeah, I live in Gosport, which is just across the Solent from Portsmouth. And just to the south, just a couple of miles, is the Isle of Wight. And it's not really capital, but the biggest town in Isle of Wight is called Cowes. They have a yacht thing every year. But the Błyskawica was there in Cowes one night in, I think, 1941 when the Luftwaffe did a night air raid. And the Błyskawica's gunners practically single-handedly defended the town from the air raid, shooting down multiple German bombers. And then the damage control crews went ashore and assisted in putting out the fires. Do I ever plan to do something in Cowes? I've been to Cowes. There's not an awful lot of historical stuff over there to look at. It's a nice enough town, and there's a couple of like plaques up on various different street corners saying on this location in such and such a time this happened, but there's not actually that much to look at. So no, I don't plan to ever do anything in Cowes. Although I did talk about what happened in Cowes with the Błyskawica in one of the videos that I did in World of Warships, featuring that ship. Oh, fun fact. So, and again, I apologise to anybody Polish listening for mangling the pronunciation, but the Błyskawica's name, which means lightning in Polish, I forget which destroyer squadron the ship was attached to at one point in World War II, but it was relieved when it was sent off to take part in other duties by HMS Lightning. So the Lightning was relieved by the Lightning. Fun fact there for you. Lightning, obviously, in game as the Tier 8, I think, British destroyer. But there you go. Anyway, moving on swiftly. Next question. I'm hammering through the questions today, aren't I? This is totally not like an episode of Mingles with Jingles where I spend 20 minutes talking about one thing.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Arline Clay said, Jingles, if you could command one Royal Navy warship from your time in the Royal Navy, which one would it be and why? Oh, you wouldn't want to be on any warship that I was captain of. I wouldn't have a clue. Although, here's the thing. I'm not saying the position of captain on a warship isn't important. Obviously, it is, but it's only really important when you're on operations, when you're deployed, when you're in action. As far as the day-to-day running of the ship is concerned, it's actually the executive officer who has far more impact on what your daily life is going to be, because the XO is responsible for discipline, the cleanliness of the ship, a whole bunch of other things, the stuff that you actually do on a day-to-day basis. So I could basically, technically, pick a ship during peacetime and just let the XO get on with it, and then take all the credit. So, well, that would rule out the Warspite, because the Warspite spent a long time getting shot at, particularly in World War One. I don't know. It's a good question. You know what? HMS Newcastle, best ship I ever served on, Type 42 destroyer. We didn't ever get shot at. We did have somebody lock us up with their fire control radar at one point off the coast of Yugoslavia, but that was about as close as it came on board the Newcastle. So yeah, that would do. I'd pick the Newcastle because it's the best ship I ever served on. Mr. Watt said, Lord Jingles, Azure Lane or Cancol? Cancol, obviously, Kantai Collection. Originally, it was Kantai Collection, and I am a big fan of the Kantai Collection Kirishima, but I'd have to go with Azure Lane. I actually played Azure Lane on my phone. Was it my phone or was it my Kindle? Whatever. Oh, that was it. I had an Azure Lane account on my Kindle, and I had I had hundreds of ships, maximum level, pimped out like you wouldn't believe. And then I got my new phone, and I tried, and there was no way of duplicating. Basically, I lost my account, and I was going to have to start again from scratch. And I just thought, no, screw that. I'm not going through all of that again. But yeah, I would pick Azure Lane simply because I just like the character designs more. Let me just quickly scroll down and see everybody's responding to my confessions. Weebs. yeah, I know. There we go. Caspian telling me how to pronounce Briskovica. So the L's sort of silent. All right, that's good to know. Anyway, back to the top. Let's crack on with these questions. Try to find the worst one. There were some very good questions posted here, by the way, which I'm really looking forward to answering. I'm trying to go through them in order, though. Jingles, why did you start making YouTube videos, and what gave you that crucial initial burst of motivation? Okay, this is actually a question I get asked all the time, and I've answered it multiple times, but oh my god, they killed Kenny has obviously never heard the answer. So for the benefit of everybody else who was wondering and doesn't already know, when I was playing World of Tanks, long before I was actually publishing videos on World of Tanks, there were various unofficial websites where you could post your replays to preserve your battle results for posterity. But because these were unofficial, supported by donations websites, most of them ended up going under, and I ended up losing all of the replays of what I thought at the time were great battles. They probably weren't, but I thought they were. This was before World of Tanks started doing their own official hosting site. So I thought to myself, well, you can record video of the replays. Why don't I just record them as video files? And because I didn't want to have gigabytes and gigabytes of video clogging up my hard drive, I can stick them on YouTube. And that's what I did. And people started watching them. And so I thought, I'll put commentary on them. And more people started watching them, and the rest is history. I wasn't actually trying to be a YouTuber. I just wanted somewhere to preserve my best World of Tanks battles. So there you go. Yeah, I stumbled into this whole thing completely by accident. I never planned to be a YouTuber until people started actually watching the shitty videos I put up. Have you ever gone back and watched some of those old videos from 7, 8, 9 years ago? My God, they're terrible. Some people may argue that they're not much better now. No comment. But yeah. Anyway, next up, Speckledorf. Jingles, if there was one thing you could forget just so that you could experience it for the first time again, what would it be? If there's one thing you could forget so you could experience it for the first time again, so not just forget completely, so that rules out my first sexual encounter. Oh, this is going to be an R-rated video now. But so I could experience it for the first time again. Lord of the Rings. I would choose to forget having read The Lord of the Rings so I could read it again for the first time. That would definitely be it. There's actually an episode of Red Dwarf where Holly does, the ship's computer does something like that, where he just basically erases all of the files of all the books and TV shows he's read. And, and as he's busy doing it, Lister turns around to him and says, "What, you've erased Anne of Green Gables?" And he says, "What's Anne of Green Gables?" Because he's already erased it. Yeah, that was a lot funnier when you watched it. I'm shit at telling stories. Anyway, moving on. Fumetsu Kage. There's weebs everywhere. I shouldn't complain. I'm technically one of them as well. Would you be willing to review Girls and Panzer, or at the very least give it a watch through? Wow. There's actually somebody around here who doesn't already know of my love for Girls and Panzer. The thing that I loved about Girls of Panzer, not just the tank battles, which were amazing, or the animation, which was fantastic, was that unlike certain other shows that deal with similar things, like Strike Witches, for example, there aren't gratuitous crotch panty shots every 15 seconds. All that fan service. It's just, it's wholesome, innocent stuff. And the characters are just so enthusiastic. It's harmless stuff, and the tank battles are great. So I have watched Girls and Panzer. Reviewing it, though, not sure. I don't know if you mean, taking one of the episodes and then doing a commentary over it. I couldn't do that. I'd fall foul of all sorts of copyright laws. But yeah, I'm a massive Girls and Panzer fan. I've seen all of the TV shows. I've seen the movie. I love them all. I've got all kinds of Girls and Panzer toys. I'm a horrible, filthy weeb. There's no use denying it. Dogue Warrior, what's your favourite ship in World of Warships? Oh, these questions are easy. Warspite, obviously. Not just because it's amazing, and it is. It's a Tier 6 battleship that has 15-inch guns, which was kind of impressive when it was first introduced as a premium. It's not the only one now. You've got the other Tier 6 battleships with even bigger guns, like the Mutsu, for example, which is on with 16-inch guns. But it can overmatch the bows of every battleship it's likely to face. It's got ridiculously good accuracy. When it was first introduced, the turret rotation was horrible. It took an entire minute for the turrets to traverse, but that got buffed. They're still kind of slow, but they're way better than they were. And it's the Warspite. What's not to love? Grand old lady of Jutland. Most powerful battleship in the world when she was built. Then kind of got eclipsed as time went by, and then she was refitted, and for a brief period she was once again the most powerful battleship in the world. Veteran of Narvik, Jutland, D-Day, longest ranged in company with the Scharnhorst, battleship on ship shot in recorded history. The ship's an absolute legend. Cerberus Collie, Jingles, when you served in the Royal Navy, what ships did you serve aboard, and what was your favourite part of serving aboard them? Okay, so I joined the Navy in 1989. I was in training as a radio operator for 6 months, and my first ship, I got flown out to Dubai to join HMS Brazen, which is a Type 22 frigate, just in time for the Gulf War, like literally a month before the Gulf War started. So that was my first ship and my first deployment. After the Brazen, this is where I can remember the ships I served on, but I can't remember the order in which I served on them. Brazen was a Plymouth-based frigate. Most frigates in the Navy at the time were based in Plymouth, with most of the destroyers based in Portsmouth or, not Faslane, Rosyth up in Scotland. Faslane is the submarine base. After the Brazen, I was on the Coventry, which was another Type 22 frigate, but stretched and was fitted for all kinds of sneaky beaky surveillance stuff, which I'm probably okay to talk about, or at least mention that it had it. I think that much is public knowledge. Coventry was okay. Then I spent about 3 or 4 months on board HMS Marlborough, which was a Type 23 Duke class frigate, but only while it was in refit in Plymouth. So I was kind of like loaned on board just to help them out as they were working on the upper deck. After that, I decided this whole radio operator shit, fuck it, why not? This isn't really a family show, is it? It was far too much like hard work, and I decided I wanted to be a writer, which is like an admin clerk. I did my training for that and was immediately posted to Portsmouth. From then on, I was always on board Type 42 destroyers, starting with, and this is where I get sketchy on which one came first, HMS Nottingham. Yes, that is the one that ran itself aground off, was it? I want to say Ayers Rock, but that's the big red thing in Australia. It ripped its bottom open off a submerged rock, which was quite clearly on, the navigation charts, but people on board weren't paying attention. Nearly sank. In fact, I know somebody who was on board it at the time, and he says they were around about 2 minutes away from sinking at the point where they got the flooding under control. After that, I was on board HMS Southampton, which, before I joined it, very famously zigged when it should have zagged and wrapped itself across the bows of a supertanker. By the way, HMS Brazen also managed to run itself aground after I left it off the coast of South America. What was my next ship? The Coventry. Sorry, I'm backtracking here. The Coventry was famously, the Type 42 destroyer named the Coventry was sunk during the Falklands. So there's a certain pattern and theme emerging here. Where are we? I've done Southampton, I've done Nottingham. Then I was on board the Newcastle, and I loved that ship so much I kept volunteering to go back to it. So I was on that for about 2.5 years. Nothing bad happened to the Newcastle, but if you look at all of the ships that were named Newcastle in the Royal Navy, of which I think there were 7. Every single one, up until the one that I served on, had either been sunk or captured by the enemy in combat. So there's a definite pattern emerging here with the ships I got sent to. And I don't know if it's me or I just got unlucky. After the Newcastle, I spent quite a time ashore, and it ended up the last ship I served on was HMS Manchester, another Type 42 destroyer. And there was nothing wrong with the Manchester, but I hated every second I spent on that because it was constantly getting posted to the South Pacific or the Indian Ocean, places really, really hot. And the Royal Navy traditionally, despite the fact that they mostly served as a sort of colonial police force in far-flung places, very hot, far-flung places all around the world, they never ever managed to sort out their air conditioning. They were fine if you were doing a North Atlantic submarine patrol. They were heated, they were warm, but anytime you went anywhere hot, you just suffered. And I do not like the heat. So yeah, I had a horrible, horrible time on the Manchester. I left the Manchester and then I ended up at the Admiralty Interview Board in Portsmouth, where they do the pre-selection for anybody who wants to be a Royal Navy Reserve, or Royal Marine officer, and then I retired. And now we're here. Next question. Jingles, this is from Isengard. If you had a ship named after you, what ship would you like it to be? Oh, that's a good one. I think I missed this question, so I'm actually seeing this one for the first time, and I don't actually have a prepared answer. What ship type would you like it to be? I suppose one of the new Daring class destroyers. Although there aren't that many of them around. You see, we had something like 24 Type 42 destroyers, and the government said, okay, you want new destroyers to replace these. They've been around since the 60s. Fair enough, we get it. But you can't have 24, so you can have 12 of these new Daring class destroyers. But they're all much, much more capable, and that's true. They are. They're way better than the old Type 42s. But being twice as good doesn't mean you can be in 2 places at the same time. But yeah, as far as the government was concerned, this is now a much more efficient navy because it's cheaper. That's the way the government measures what's efficient and what isn't about your military. And then it went from 12 to 10, and then it went from 10 to 8, and I think we're down to 6 now, possibly still 8. I don't know, but somehow I don't feel we're really getting our money's worth out of handing over all of those Type 42s, because even if it is 8 ships can't be in the same place as 24 ships. The math just doesn't work. But you try telling the Treasury that. So yeah. Anyway. 10th of December 1941. Jingles, how do you use the hybrid battleship Issei and Cruisertona to their maximum potential? As far as the Tone is concerned, only ever launch the aircraft when nobody is shooting at you and you're only going to use them for spotting, because they suck. The Issei, on the other hand, its aircraft are quite useful. Here's the thing. Taken in isolation, the Issei is a perfectly well-designed ship. Its use of aircraft is quite practical. It's not, overpowered at all. and the guns aren't bad either. So you can you can never use the aircraft in it, although you know you may as well while you're waiting for the guns to reload. There's nothing wrong with the Issei, but you can't view it taken in isolation. You have to take it in the context of everybody else in the team. When the team has 2 aircraft carriers, 2 of your 3 battleships are Isseis, 1 of your 3 cruisers are Tones. Because were people seriously saying, you know what, Wargaming, we need more aircraft in World of Warships. Can we have hybrid battleships and cruisers, please? And I guarantee you we will see hybrid submarines as well, because the I-400 class of submarines from the Imperial Japanese Navy had a hangar with 3 aircraft on board, a couple of which did actually bomb the USA. Completely ineffectually, but you know, it happened. So I guarantee you we'll see hybrid submarines at some point, probably as a premium, probably at, I don't know, tier 8, 9 or 10. So yeah, how to use them? Hopefully don't. To reduce the amount of aircraft that everybody else has to put up with. But if you do have to use them, these say use the airstrikes appropriately. You know, if you're getting hammered by multiple high explosive shells from multiple cruisers and destroyers, it's probably not a good time to be setting out an airstrike. If you can get yourself in a useful position where you're not subject to too much in the way of return fire, and you've just fired your guns, that would be the perfect opportunity to get the aircraft off. Next question up from NepNep. Jingles, if there was one fictional character you wish was real, who would it be and why? Oh, that's a good one. I might have to circle round back to that. One fictional character I wished was real. Wow. I'm gonna have a think about that and come back to it, NepNep. But yeah, that's definitely something worth thinking. I mean, there's all kinds of fictional characters. You know, I've always been a big fan of Dr. McCoy from Star Trek. I don't know if I would say he was the one fictional character I wish was real. Yeah, I'll have to circle around back to that later once I've had a chance to think about it. Moving on to the next question.
The Optimus Prime.
Optimus Prime. I was never a Transformers fan though. Yeah, because it could be anything really. It doesn't have to be a book. It can be a movie, a TV show, or whatever. A fictional character that I wish was real. No, got nothing. I'll think about that and maybe try to circle back around to it later. And his name's in dark purple on a dark grey background. Fishy, I can't read this. I'm sorry. But he's asking, Jingles is the one who wrote the current anime section rules. I wonder, do you lurk in the anime section at all? Do you find something to watch from our discussions on there? I haven't found anything to watch from your discussions on there. I'm not actually a huge anime fan. There's stuff that I mean, Girls and Panzer I thought was amazing. I love the Fate Stay Night series mostly for the same reasons that I love Girls and Panzer. And back in the very early 90s, there was a huge explosion of anime in the UK when Akira and Venus Wars and Tank Police and stuff like that first made it onto the UK market, and there was plenty of stuff I watched back then. But a lot of anime I'm sorry, I just don't like. However, I do occasionally lurk around in the anime channel, mostly looking at the pictures, if you know what I mean. So, yeah. All right, I'm a weeb, fine, I said it. Are you happy now? Yes, I'm one of you. See how everybody's reacting to that one further down. Discord's taken forever to catch up. What's that? You piece of what? I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Right, next question. I'm trying to find out where I was. Oh, here we go. From Noodle. I think that's how you pronounce it. You've said before, if I remember right, that you're an ex-Navy man. Have you, or would you do a charity stream or add donations to charities that help ex-military personnel get back onto their feet after their deployment? I have done stuff for charity. I'm not just, taking part in Quickie Baby's annual charity live stream. There's a charity called Models for Heroes that I got in touch with when I went down to the Southwest Model Show at the Tank Museum last year, I think, right before the whole COVID thing kicked off. One of my very good friends, Nick, who's ex-army, is working with Models for Heroes, and as a result of that, I did some stuff for them. But there is actually, he's making a very good suggestion here actually, because you can add fundraisers to videos on YouTube. So if there's a particular, and unfortunately this is something that I have tried to do in the past. I tried to do this for Models for Heroes, because there's a button where when you're publishing the video, you can click Add Fundraiser and then select from a charity, and then that becomes part of the video. People can donate while watching the video to the charity of your choice. But Models for Heroes wasn't on there. But that's definitely something. You're absolutely right. I should be doing more, and that I'm going to see if I can find some kind of veterans charity that is actually available as a charity that you can select as a fundraiser on YouTube, and include that in a future video. So thanks for the reminder, I suppose, is the best way of describing it. But yes, yeah, definitely something I should be trying to do more of. Next question came from Daddy in the East. Jingles, if you could have a one-on-one fist fight or MMA match with an historical character, for example Julius Caesar, Eisenhower, Gandhi or Tojo, etc., who would it be and why? So if I could get into a fight with somebody from history, a fist fight, who would that be? Oh, I reckon Pocahontas. I could probably take Pocahontas in a fight. Or maybe Gandhi. Yeah, yeah. Pocahontas or Gandhi. And Gandhi wouldn't be much of a threat. I could probably take him. Yeah, but Julius Caesar, no, he was a nasty bastard. Definitely not George Patton, and he was crazy. Yeah, I wouldn't want to get into a fight with anybody who stands a reasonable chance of being able to beat me. So I'd probably have to go for Pocahontas or Gandhi. There you go. Honestly, was anybody expecting anything different? Mush. Sorry. Actually, I'm just going to have a quick drink and wet my throat. And we're back. What server does the Mighty Overlord play in Weebcraft? I'm on the Chaos Shard, which I think is one of the EU mega servers, and at the moment my character is on, I think it's the Ragnarok server. I did actually get somebody come over to see me while I was busy doing some mining yesterday in World of Weebcraft. Very, very nice. I've completely forgotten his name. It was mostly unpronounceable. He was a very, very nice guy. Pleasure to meet. If you're listening to this, I apologise for forgetting your name, but it's your fault for making it so complicated. The Idolmaster. Kia ora, Jingles. Will we, the lowly salt miners, get to see a man cave at any point in the future that's soon? I've personally been wanting to see a collection of weeb statues, other models and paintings and things. Granted, I don't really watch Mingles but Jingles, so I don't know if it's been done there, but I would still like to see it. Cheers, mate. The thing you have to understand is I live in this really, really horrible house. It's an old Navy married quarter, which was sold on to a private housing association. The thing you have to understand about Navy married quarters is they were all built by the lowest bidder, which is why they're so cheap. And it really is a horrible, nasty house. I've done what I can, but I don't really want to be pointing a camera around the inside of this place, because I mean I've done what I can with the various different, like the man cave and so and so. I've got a gaming room now. Well, it's not really a gaming room. One of the spare rooms I recently turned into I've got a card table there for playing poker. I've got the big old TV screen with the PlayStation, and whenever I'm not doing stuff here, playing games, doing recording videos and stuff, I'll go and sit through there and have a quiet drink and watch something on YouTube on the big screen on the PS4. The stuff in the rooms is nice, but the rooms themselves are kind of nasty. So probably not anytime soon. Don't really want to do a house tour in a house that I'm kind of ashamed of, because it's a shitty old married quarter. They were made by the lowest bidder. I am currently saving up, and have been for several years now, to get a better place. When that happens, hopefully within the next year or two, I will be entirely happy to do a house tour video once I've gotten it all decorated and gotten everything placed up in display cases and so on. But I wouldn't hold your breath waiting for it anytime soon. Sorry about that.
Ooh. Um, if I may interrupt,
Yeah.
J J Paul Jones _1 has asked a really good question.
Uh-huh.
Jingles, if you were given control of wargaming, how would you fix aircraft carriers?
Oh, that is easy. I'd select them all on the database, and then I'd press the delete key. There you go. Fixed. Done. Everybody's happy except for the 600 people who play aircraft carriers. If I had to keep them, I don't think you can, honestly, because they're just so fundamentally imbalanced. I mean, people say, well, yeah, but aircraft carriers did change the face of naval warfare. Well, yeah, nobody's arguing that they didn't. Aircraft carriers were overpowered in real life, but that's no reason to have them overpowered in the game. You have to try to balance things. And I don't think aircraft carriers are balanceable. I don't think it's possible. Wargaming have spent 2 years trying. They kind of succeeded in some areas, they kind of didn't in others. Have you seen the skip bombs on these new Russian carriers that are being introduced? Everybody heard, oh, yeah, they're only going to have one strike. And they thought, well, that's fantastic because, there's very little more demoralizing than having all of your AA guns blazing away with your reinforced sector up and your defensive fire active and watching the carrier just fly right through it, hit you, fly over, turn around, come back, hit you again, and then do the same thing a third time. And you're thinking, are these things just special effects? These anti-aircraft, do they actually do anything? And so they thought, oh, yeah, great. Russian carriers only get one strike and then they're gone. Yeah, but have you seen what they do with that one strike? With those skip bombs? I watched somebody basically just nuke a full health Ognavoy. That particular video Twitch clip has been doing the rounds. At the same time, you've got to be careful because we saw that people were doing 100% damage using the Golden Line, the new Dutch Tier 10 cruiser, with their airstrike, just completely nuking a Tier 10 battleship from full health to nothing. But that full health battleship was just sitting there not manoeuvring. It was the perfect storm of getting those airstrikes off and having them all hit at the same time. And I think it was actually 3 golden lines and we're all focusing the same target. So he was getting hit by something like 9 airstrikes. And you see that happen in a YouTube clip and you think, holy shit, these things are ridiculously overpowered. But then they come into the game and they're actually a bit shit. So I'm cautious about saying, oh my God, have you seen what these new Russian carriers can do? Because it's easy to see one clip and post that up and say, yeah, look at this, they're overpowered. When in reality, they might not be, but at the same time, they might. Sorry, just need to clear my throat. The fact that carriers can scout better than destroyers without putting themselves at any risk whatsoever. You've got carriers with AP rockets that are basically just heavy cruisers with 8-inch armor piercing shells that can zip around the map at 130 knots. And doesn't matter how much you shoot at them, the cruiser itself doesn't take any damage. A lot of them, some of them, you look at the Germans, they've got better secondaries than the German battleships. And then of course you finally catch one of the buggers. You unload a whole dose of armor piercing into them, and you get 9 ricochets. Why do they have everything? It's just not fair. And there's a reason why I call them the fun police, because you always have a better game when there are no carriers in the matchmaker. It's just, but Wargaming are committed to making them a success. And of course, as far as Wargaming is concerned, success is defined as how many people play carriers to justify the expense and effort that they went to redo them and keep them in the game. As long as this number of people are playing carriers, the carrier rework can be considered a success. Not what do people think of carriers, not is it any fun to play against them, how many people are playing them. As long as they keep the carrier numbers at a certain level, it's tick the boxes and they can say, yep, carrier rework was a success. And yeah, no, sorry, it's not. I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy playing them. I mean, I hope you don't, because then fewer people will be playing them and ruining things for everybody else. But, that's just the way it is. So, yeah, thank you. I've completely forgotten who the person was who asked that question, but it was a great question, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to get that off my chest. Anyway, back to the pre-selected. Pre-selected? Well, I'm not pre-selected, but I'm basically going through them in order. And we are down to... Oh, yes. Again, difficult choice of name, colour against the background here. I can't see what your name is, sorry, but he's asking, what happened to Boo? Haven't heard anything regarding the little one in way too long. Don't worry, nothing happened. Boo is fine. Boo's just getting really old. He's 12 years old now. And he's a little bit overweight because he gets spoiled rotten. So Boo spends most of his time just snoring. Occasionally he gets up, goes out and has a sniff around the garden, maybe barks at a cat or something, and then comes back in. But he spends most of the time just lying around sleeping. There's nothing wrong. I mean, I'm not going to say there's nothing wrong with him. He's getting old. But nothing has happened to him, so don't worry about Boo. For anybody who doesn't have a clue who Boo is, Boo's my Chihuahua. He's a great little dog. Unlike most Chihuahuas, he's not the bad-tempered, angry little shit, because I raised him properly and didn't treat him as a fashion accessory, unlike most Chihuahua owners. So yeah, he's a nice, sweet, old little dog, and he's doing fine. Excuse me. Mama Friedrich de Gross, Jingles, thoughts on Azure Lane. Kind of already addressed this. Did kind of play it on my Kindle every night when I went to bed until I fell asleep, and then got a new phone and tried to start a new account, and it kind of didn't work, and all went horribly wrong, and I lost everything on the old account. And so I mean, it's there. I quite like the artwork, but I don't play it. Jolly Roger 84103, Jingles, how does one go about submitting the War Thunder replay? Okay, so you go to just about any video I have ever put up on YouTube, or you just go to my YouTube channel and click the About button and read it. Or just about any video I've ever put up on YouTube, go to the... Well, I've forgotten what you call it now. Oh my god, you wouldn't believe I do this for a living. In the video description, scroll to the bottom and read it. Or basically, send the replay to jingles. I've forgotten my... Oh my god, you wouldn't believe I'm a professional. Does anybody remember my email address? Hang on. It's there in the video description. So it's... which account? charlton.paul70@gmail.com. Whack it to that email address. Yeah. Don't send it...
On here,
Yeah.
if you're... sorry to interrupt. If you're on here, you can just press exclamation replay help, and that will give you all the information you need.
There you go. If you're on the Discord, Saltmine's Discord server, just exclamation replay help. There's the information. Do not send them to the business address. I go into the business email address every day and delete at least a dozen replays that get sent to that address. That's not what that address is for. So send them to the email address linked in the description of every video I've ever uploaded, the About section of my YouTube channel, or information here on the Saltmines Discord server. Hickstar said, Jingles, hope you're having a good day. I can't think of a good question, so please provide a fun fact about one of your fur babies. Okay, so there's three of them. There's Boo, obviously, the little dog. There's Akazuki, the Maine Coon, who's 2.5 years old now. Wow, they grow up so fast. And then there's Juicy, my big, dumb Dutch ginger cat. And she's not as young as she used to be either. She's 10 years old now. Juicy loves stealing food. So whenever I cook dinner, I usually take it up to the games room because I've got a big card table there set up for playing poker. And I eat on sitting at that table watching something on YouTube or Twitch on the TV connected to the PS4. And a couple of weeks ago, I'd cooked myself a T-bone steak with some mashed potatoes, peas and gravy, and so on and so on and so on. Halfway through eating, and the steak was lovely, by the way, I had to answer a call of nature. So I got up to go to the bathroom. When I came back, Juicy had the steak in her mouth and was running out of the games room into the bedroom in order to hide under the bed and try to eat the steak. The steak was almost as big as her, but she gave it a damn good try. If you don't watch her when there's food around, she'll have it. She does this sort of thing all the time. Next question. Wow, I'm going to have to scroll down. We're getting through these at a prodigious rate. Gab asked, if you hadn't joined the Royal Navy, what do you think you'd have done instead? Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, actually. See, the reason I joined the Royal Navy was because they were advertising. It wasn't a question of, I didn't really think it through that well because they were advertising specifically for radio operators. So in Newcastle upon Tyne, the town I grew up in, there's a local newspaper called the Evening Chronicle. And in the Evening Chronicle, there was this little banner advert for Royal Navy recruiting radio operators. I never stopped to ask myself, why are they recruiting radio operators? What is so shit about being a radio operator that people are quitting? And they're running so low that they have to start advertising specifically for them. Didn't bother to stop and ask myself that question because I was young and stupid. Um, but if I hadn't, I mean, it wasn't. I probably would never have joined the army because that seems like far too much like hard work. I mean, sleeping in ditches and all that. No, sorry. At least in the Navy, you get to sleep in a bed every night with pretty bad air conditioning, but 3 square hot meals a day. You don't have to, eat out of ration packs and sleep in hedges. So, if not for the Navy, I mean, the Army would have been out of the question. I guess. I guess if I didn't want to join the military, I could have just joined the Air Force. That's what most people seem to do. You have to understand, okay? The Army and the Navy have their differences, but we are united in the deep and abiding contempt for the Royal Air Force. It's just those are the rules. I just have to play along. I didn't make them. Where are we? We are at. Sorry, I'm losing track of the questions here. Da, 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 da. Jingles, have you seen the current situation in South Africa? What are your thoughts? I actually had not seen the current situation in South Africa until I saw this question. And I thought, what's going on in South Africa? That's how out of touch I am with reality, living in my little isolation bubble. So, as some of you are doubtless aware, I lived in South Africa for about 4 years. Excuse me, between the ages of 12 and 16. And there was some fairly, momentous upheaval going on at the time. This was between 1982 and 1986. So the Soweto riots and so on and so on and all that sort of thing. What's happening at the moment is as bad or worse. With the former president being jailed for a contempt of court charge. I think he's received a 15-month sentence. I mean, the guy's guilty. You do the crime, you do the time. But his supporters are very angry about this, and now there's mass riots all over South Africa, hundreds dead. The first I knew of this was actually watching an Aussie Man Reviews video on YouTube, where he was reviewing the worst looter ever, and it was from South Africa, where a guy had this 52-inch TV that he was trying to get into the boot of his, into the 30-inch wide boot of his car, while being filmed by a news crew, just looting TVs. And what the hell's going on here? So then I did a bit of reading up. I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is actually pretty bad. But yeah, the situation is the former president has been put in jail for contempt of court, and people who support him have decided that the best way to respond to that is to go out burning and killing. So, yeah, my thoughts and prayers to anybody who lives in South Africa. There's a lot of fake stuff being pushed around the internet because of that as well. I don't know if you've seen White Farmer being whipped as part of this is all stuff that happened years ago that people are like slapping a brand new current events in South Africa template on and sticking up as misinformation. I mean, the situation's pretty bad, but it's a lot of the stuff that you see on the internet that's supposed to be what's happening in South Africa right now is faked, or it's misleading, or it's referring to stuff that isn't actually happening right now. So yeah, be careful what you read on the internet. Not all of it's true. Jingles, would you be interested in a community event thing in Elite Dangerous where we'll all gather at some place, like the base you name, for an event of some kind? This is from Sodium Chloride. Honestly, Sodium, I'm falling out of love with Elite due to the way that Frontier Developments have hideously botched the Odyssey expansion. Every now and then I fire up the launcher and I download and install any updates, but I haven't actually played in about a month and a half. I'm hoping that when it comes to the console release, they'll have fixed everything, but I'm not hoping that much. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be all kinds of horrendous bugs in the console release as well. Although they do have, don't know if I'm actually allowed to tell you about. Well, I can't hurt to tell you, and if I do get into trouble for it, well, what the hell. Jurassic World Evolution 2 is coming out soon, and I'm getting an early look at that, and hopefully that's going to be good. But Elite, until they can get their fingers out of their arse and fix everything that they screwed up, I have very little time for Elite. I don't know if you actually, clearly you do, since you're asking a question about Elite, but if you follow other YouTubers and streamers who do Elite, there's probably the most well-known voice in the Elite community is a guy called Obsidian Ant, and he is always trying to put a positive spin, not because he's, kissing Frontier Development's arse or anything, but he just doesn't believe in being negative for the sake of being negative, and he always tries to see the bright side. And when Obsidian Ant is coming down hard on Frontier Development, there's a big problem. So yeah, sorry, but no, I'm not really interested in Elite until they fix their shit. General WCJ, Jingles, what game are you most looking forward to releasing? I'd have to say Baldur's Gate 3, which came out a while back in early access, but you could only play like the first 10% of the game, if that, which was pretty good, although the difficulty level was horrendously bad. But that's the purpose of releasing stuff in early access, so you can, because they do this thing called, they have a heat map of where all the players die, and they look at where all these big clusters of masses of player deaths are occurring, and that tells them, yeah, we've probably tuned this a little bit too hard. And I think the heat map for the Baldur's Gate 3 demo, early access, whatever you want to call it, was just this sea of red. It was, generally speaking, the difficulty was kind of a little bit too much. But yeah, I mean, I had great memories of the original Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2, Shadows of Arm, role-playing games from the bad old days. That doesn't necessarily mean that any kind of sequel is going to be as good, because often you'll just see people buy up the rights to use the name, and they're hoping that brand recognition is going to drag people in. But what I played of it was pretty good, if a little hard. But that's easily fixed. You just tune it down a little. So I'm not that excited about most stuff that's coming out. I mean, you got Far Cry 6, which I'm sure is just going to be like Far Cry 5, which was just like Far Cry 4. And I'll probably play it, and I'll probably enjoy it. I mean, it's, what's his name? Gus Fring from Breaking Bad. I cannot remember the name of the actor at the moment, but he's the bad guy in this one around. And the Far Cry games have really mostly been about the bad guys, because the character that you play is usually completely bland and uninteresting. But the bad guys, starting with Vas Montenegro, who was played by an actor who was also in Better Call Saul, the sequel to Breaking Bad. Wow. Um, Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4, it was Pagan Min, who I thought was an amazing character. You got Joseph Seed, or John Seed, in Far Cry 5, again, a really, really complex and interesting character. And hopefully that'll, continue into Far Cry 6, where, again, the actor whose name I cannot remember, but who I first saw in Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man back in the early 90s, starring Don Johnson and Mickey Rourke. Check that movie out, by the way. This is pissing me off now. I'm going to have to look him up. Sorry. Far Cry 6 bad guy. Come on. I'm doubtless everybody in the main channel is typing his name. Played by... Oh, come on. Pictures of him. I know what he looks like. It's his name I can't remember. Giancarlo Esposito. There you go. Yeah. I think he's amazing. I've loved him in just about everything he's ever been in. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully that'll be enough to elevate the usual gameplay loop of Far Cry 6 into something memorable. But other than that, Baldur's Gate 3. How are we doing for time? Oh, it's been an hour already. All right, well, anyway, onwards and upwards. Still plenty of questions to answer. Gabs, would you be interested in putting together a King of the Sea team? Have you seen me play? No, not if you want to win. Here's the thing. I'm good enough or know enough about the way these games work just to be dangerous to myself. I mean, I'm not bad. I'm probably better than average, but I'm not a unicorn by any stretch of the imagination. I'm no Flambu. I'm no Flambas. I'm no Daniel Roussev. You know, it's that's just not what I do. A Kings of the Sea. I mean, if you guys want to put together a King of the Sea team, then absolutely, by all means, go for it. But you definitely wouldn't want me to be a member, not if you plan on actually progressing beyond the group stages. Um, Bubbalis, I believe that's how you pronounce your name. Jingles, over the years in Mingles, you've told us quite a few stories from your time in the Royal Navy. Would it be possible for you to share some pictures as well? I don't actually have any. I I think I have maybe two, and I only know where one of those is. Um, don't forget, it's not as easy to take pictures. I mean, it's far easier to take pictures now than it was when I was in the Navy. Mobile phones didn't have cameras on them when I was in the Navy. Um, they had, two color LCD screens when I was in the Navy. So if you wanted to take a picture of anything, you had to actually have a camera, and a camera isn't typically something that you carry around in your pocket. So there are very, very few pictures of me from those days. And like I said, I think I've got one on my Facebook page. It's quite a funny photo, actually. It was on board HMS Newcastle. Excuse me. It was on board HMS Newcastle, and my leading writer Crockett, nicknamed Davy, it was his birthday. So in our mess deck were the stores accountants, the writers, us, and the stewards. And the stewards took it upon themselves to organise a birthday party for him. But this is what happens when you let the stewards organise something. They did a great job. I have to say, they organised a cake, decorations for the mess deck, tiny little mess deck. It was a 14-man mess, and, well, the mess deck was probably about 8 foot by 6 feet. I mean, you couldn't all sit in there at the same time, but we tried, and they made this banner out of an old bed sheet that they draped across the back wall of the mess that said "Happy Birthday, Davy," except it didn't because they're stewards and they can't spell, so it said "Happy Birthday, Davy." So, and I have a picture of that, and I'm pretty sure it's up on my pictures on Facebook or something. But other than that, I think that's the only picture that actually exists of me when I was in the Navy. Sorry, but there you go. And it's always a good excuse to tell a Navy story, so there you are. Emperor Jeff asked, "Dear Jingles, why did you join the Navy?" I believe I've pretty much already covered that earlier on. Sorry, Jeff. Schnooks, the changer of names. Oh, mighty overlord Jongly Doo, I ask thee this humble question. Does little Aki like belly scritches? I know some cats do and some don't. If so, please give us some scritches for me. She does actually enjoy belly scritches. She's got such thick and luxurious fur on her belly. It's like rubbing your hand through silk. It's amazing, and she doesn't object to it. Unlike Juicy, who, despite being a short-haired cat, does have the most unbelievably inviting looking belly fur. It's just thick and fluffy, and you see it and your hand is involuntarily drawn towards it. The problem is, Juicy's belly is her murder button. If you touch her belly, she will murder you. She's funny like that as well, though, because she'll be lying down there on the floor, begging to be petted. So you'll start giving her ears a scratch, and then give the top of her head a scratch, and then under her chin, and then you'll start scratching her back, and she'll roll over, exposing her belly. So if you don't move your hand and you continue scratching, you are now scratching her belly. At that point, you have about a fifth of a second to move your hand before she just looks at you with this look of betrayal on her face and says, oh, "Can't believe you did that." "I didn't do that. You did that." But she'll go for your hand anyway, because that's just, cats. That's what she's like. But yes, I will give Akazuki some scritches from you. Next question from Aeon AGV. "Oh dear Overlord, Jingaroo, do you have any more stories of your childhood in South Africa?" I'm not sure what I've told you and what I haven't told you, but I haven't talked about my childhood in South Africa in so long that most of you probably never heard those stories or forgotten them because it was so long ago. The one thing I think that I remember most about South Africa, and remember, I was living there between 82 and 86, which was a period of pretty strong political upheaval in South Africa. The apartheid regime was still in full swing, but there wasn't open rebellion, but things were getting pretty bad. And of course, I was a white kid living in South Africa. Although I lived in Swaziland, but I went to boarding school in South Africa because Swaziland had great primary schools, but they only really had one decent high school, and that was a very, very expensive high school. So most people sent their kids to boarding schools in South Africa. So on the ground floor of the boarding school, of the what they called it, the hostel, it's where all of the kids' accommodation was. They have, and it's not just in the boarding school, but all South African houses. On the windows have these things called burglar bars, which are basically solid iron bars, so that you can't climb in or out of the window. Even if you open the window, you pop the mosquito net, you cannot climb in or out of these windows. And that's a security feature, which is a standard thing in South African houses. And when I was at this boarding school, because as a junior I lived on the the juniors lived on the upper floor, the seniors lived on the ground floor. And when I became a senior, shortly before we left South Africa, come back to the UK when I was 16. So when I was about 15, I ended up moving downstairs because I was a senior now. And what everybody did, and you didn't think this was weird or anything, it's just what people did. There were two beds in a room, one bed on each side of the room, with the head of the bed next to the window. And in between the two beds, there was a bookshelf and a table and a chair up against the window. And what you would do at night was you would shut the curtains, and then you would ram the table up against, you'd put the bookshelf on top of the table, because it was behind the table during the day, and then you'd ram the table up against the curtains so that the table was jamming the curtains down tight, and then you'd go to sleep. And the reason you did that was so if anybody threw a petrol bomb through the window, it wouldn't explode inside the room. It would just bounce off the curtains. The curtains would go up in flames, but you wouldn't die. And we didn't think there was anything weird about that. That's just how you grew up in South Africa at the time. And that's probably how you grow up in South Africa at the moment as well. Not a lot seems to have changed. Anyway. Oh, I love this question. I saw this one when I was reviewing the questions the other day, and I thought, I can't wait to answer this one. This is from Primal Tempest, North American server. Jingles, worst Liberty port and why? Mine was Guam, so he's obviously a US Navy veteran. Was stuck there for a month performing an emergency battery change. We were only allowed to go to two areas, the naval base and the Tumon Bay area, even though Guam is a US territory. Yeah, I can beat you that. I can definitely beat you on that one. Worst Liberty port ever is Djibouti in Ethiopia. We weren't allowed to go ashore at all for reasons of safety. And honestly, I wouldn't have wanted to. Here's what happened. We only stopped in Djibouti for one day. It was a fueling stop. There's a NATO fueling facility there. And when you've been at sea a week or two, you accumulate a shit ton of rubbish. Contrary to popular belief, we don't just dump it over the side, because the Navy is probably one of the few maritime organisations that doesn't contribute towards the pollution of the oceans. So it's all kept on board. And the compartment where the rubbish bags are kept gets pretty ripe after a couple of days at sea in hot weather. So as soon as you get alongside, they make the pipe on the main broadcast, out all gash, out all gash. And there's a couple of skips on the jetty, and basically everybody, you go to the mess deck, you empty the bins there, you take them ashore. You go to the gash compartment, you grab gash bags, and then you take them ashore and you dump them in the skip. That was the plan in Djibouti. But things never got that far, because as soon as the first person stepped off the gangway onto the jetty with these rubbish bags, we call them gash bags in the Navy, it's just Navy slang, gash rubbish. As soon as you walked off the gangway and stepped foot on the jetty, you got mobbed, because there was a huge crowd of locals who would rip the bin bags off you and then fight amongst each other to go through the contents. So nobody got to take a bin bag ashore. They just threw it, and they just started throwing them to the people on the jetty who were fighting each other to go through the contents and to find something useful. I saw one guy got one flip, not even a pair of flip-flops, just one flip-flop, like beach shoes, and ran off waving it over his head. Oh, I got a flip, that's, I mean, the people didn't have anything. They didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. I'm not blaming them, but There is no way I would have ever wanted to go ashore in Djibouti, even if we'd been allowed to. It was horrible. Ah, name changer extraordinaire. Oh, which is just a public service announcement. The channel will be open tomorrow during. Yeah, okay, right. So he's not actually asking me a question. He's just posting some information there relevant to everybody else. USS Oklahoma says, Jingles, how are you? I'm not bad, actually. Thank you for asking. I hope you're okay too. I hope you're actually here listening to this live. Let me have a quick look. Let me switch channels. Wow, there's 152 people here, so I'm never going to find you amongst that lot. Anyway, back to the questions. And it's by default gone all the way back to the. Oh, okay, we're going to scroll through the questions again, trying to get back to where I was. We're doing quite well here. We've gone through a couple of pages. Ah, here we go. I think I've almost caught up with the start of the stream. I'm just. Don't worry, we'll edit this out for YouTube. I always say that and I never do it. Okay, here we go. Jingles, could you retell some of the war stories? Ah, yes, this is from Yomu Kompaku fan. Jingles, could you retell some of the war stories you talk about in the past, like Leo Major? Some of the videos where you talked about them were taken down due to fear of copyright. Yeah, it's a shame about that. A lot of those old episodes of Mingles with Jingles just went, mostly because I used, and this is my fault, I shouldn't have done it. But back in the day, everybody did because there were no consequences until there were consequences. Because I used John Williams' March from 1941 as the theme tune for Mingles with Jingles. Many of you probably remember it. I know I do. But yeah, Leo, has anybody, I don't know why I'm asking you, it's not like I can see your responses, they're in the other channel. Leo Major was a French-Canadian lumberjack, so already hard as nails, who joined the Canadian Army and was in the 1st Canadian Division in World War II. I can't remember the name of the guy, the general in command of the 1st Canadian Division, but he hardly gets any recognition, and he was one of the most effective generals of any nation in all of World War II. But doubtless it'll come back to me at some point. Here's the thing, excuse me, sorry, been drinking a lot of Coke here. Leo Major, French-Canadian lumberjack, joined the Canadian Army in World War II, served in Europe, all through D-Day and on right up to the end of the war, and survived the war. Surprisingly, considering what he did, this guy was the ultimate badass. One of the British, when I say British, I mean Commonwealth, objectives of D-Day was the port of Antwerp. Well, actually, no, it was the port of Caen, but later on Antwerp, which was a bigger and better port. And they eventually, took the town of Antwerp, even though the docks had been demolished by the Germans. And it was going to take time to clear the docks. The thing is, holding Antwerp was useless unless you also controlled the Scheldt estuary, the approach to Antwerp, because you can have the best port in the world. If you can't get through the approach to the port without being shot up by German coastal batteries, then the port is useless. And Admiral Bert Ramsay, I believe, who was the guy responsible for the Royal Navy at that time, who also, unless I'm mistaken, was the guy responsible for Operation Dynamo, the evacuation of Dunkirk, had warned Montgomery that if they did not clear the Scheldt estuary, Antwerp would be closed. And Monty, of course, said, yeah, it'll be fine. He didn't listen to advice from other people. He's Montgomery. That's just, what he did. The thing is, at the time, when Admiral Ramsay told Montgomery about this problem, a couple of battalions of infantry could have cleared the Scheldt estuary because it wasn't held in, I think, anything other than regimental strength by the Germans. But of course, Monty did nothing until about a month later, at which point the Germans had massively reinforced it. And, as predicted, Antwerp was closed to shipping until they could clear this out. And Montgomery gave the job to the 1st Canadian Division. And it was a pretty hard slog. It took them at least a month to fully clear this place out, and eventually open Antwerp up to shipping. Way behind schedule. And this is where Leo Major makes his appearance. This guy, I cannot remember the name of the town or the exact date. I can't remember the exact name of the places where it happened. When I did the original episode of Mingles with Jingles and talked about him, obviously I had all this information at my fingertips. But for now, all you need to know is One night, prior to an attack going in the next morning, in order to clear out this town of Germans, and as a part of the stepping stone process of clearing the whole of the Scheldt estuary, Leo and one of his friends decided they were going to go and take a look. So they swam over the river, came across a German position, and in the ensuing firefight, Leo's friend got shot. This seemed to really piss Leo off, because he then single-handedly went into the town, going door to door with hand grenades and a submachine gun, killing every German he could find and taking prisoners. And he would shoot at anybody who failed to surrender, then take the ones who did surrender, march them back and hand them over, and then go back into the town and do it again. He did this all night, resupplying ammunition, and then he basically captured or killed an entire company of German soldiers. Single-handedly cleared the town. The guy had balls so big he needed a wheelbarrow to carry them around in. I mean, that's how impressive this fellow was. But the best part is that when his exploits reached the ears of the higher command, he was immediately nominated for a medal by Montgomery. I don't know if it was the Victoria Cross. It damn well should have been. It might have been, because they had this, and they still do have this really shit system in the British Army for awarding medals. No one division, you have an allotment, you have an allocation. Like, no one division in any one period of time could be awarded more than 2 Victoria Crosses or 4 Distinguished Service Orders or Distinguished Conduct Medals, and so on and so on. So if you had a division that wasn't doing an awful lot, but there was 2 examples of extreme bravery, even though they were in a relatively quiet sector and not a lot was happening, then those 2 guys would get Victoria Crosses. But if you had another division that was heavily engaged in a different sector with multiple instances of extreme heroism, only 2 of them could get Victoria Crosses, and everybody else would have to settle for less prestigious medals. That may have been the case. Again, I don't really remember the details, whether it was a Victoria Cross or a lesser medal. But either way, Montgomery personally wanted to award Leo this medal, and he told Montgomery to fuck off. And yeah, that was Leo Major. The central street in the town that he single-handedly liberated is named after him to this day. God, it was utterly amazing. Oh, so how are we all doing? I'm going to quickly scroll down just to see what's happening in chat, because I can't actually get any. He gets the drunk part down, Pat. Yes, you can still ask your questions during the live part. We're rapidly coming to the end of the pre-registered questions, and then we'll do some of the live questions as well. And we're nearly there. Yeah, it's not bad. I have been going for well over an hour. We'll see. We'll crack on and try. I think we might actually get all of these pre-registered questions done, and then go with some of the live ones. So, Jingles, are you enjoying reading these questions? Nelson, yes, I am. Silver Wings. When at sea was the weirdest, oddest thing at sea. When I was working a 2-man boat, the scariest thing me dad saw was the Queen Anne's Revenge. Did you ever see anything like that at sea? I feel like I should know what Queen Anne's Revenge is, and I might have to Google it now and pretend that I knew what it was all along. But I've never actually heard of that one. Queen Anne's Revenge. Excuse me.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, right. Because it was actually the name of a ship used by Edward Teach, Blackbeard the Pirate. Anyway, I never actually saw anything particularly weird while I was at sea. I saw some very, very impressive stuff that will stay with me forever. That happened relatively often, actually. I don't know if for anybody who's ever been at sea at night in an area where there are dolphins, because as the ship's moving along at cruising speed, it generates the wake behind the ship. And these are basically foam and bubbles in the water. And dolphins love that shit because it basically tickles them. So you'll get, as you're there on the quarterdeck having a cigarette after sundown, and there are dolphins skipping through the wake of the ship, and it's amazing. But when it happens at night, especially, if you're in an area where there's any kind of phosphorescence, it looks like there are ghost dolphins skipping through the wake of the ship at night. It's one of the most amazing things I have ever seen. Unfortunately, of course, no photographic evidence exists because this was in the days when mobile phones didn't have cameras. So, sorry. But trust me, if you ever get the opportunity, if you're in an area, if you're on a ship, whether it's just a ferry or you're taking a cruise or whatever, get yourself down to the arse end of the ship at night and watch the dolphins because they love playing in the wake of moving ships. Excuse me. Premeditated murder. If you had creative control over wargaming, what would you most like to change in World of Tanks and or World of Warships? Well, World of Warships, remove aircraft carriers. Done. Instantly, the game improves 100% for everybody who matters. World of Tanks, initially I wanted to say remove gold ammo, but it isn't really as simple as that in World of Tanks. I mean, the gold ammo in World of Tanks, aside from gold high explosive for artillery, it tends to either be either APDS, armor piercing discarding sabot, or heat, high explosive anti-tank. And these ammunition types existed, so they should be in World of Tanks. And yet you have some tanks that have APDS ammo as their standard ammunition. So just removing gold, I don't think, I mean, it's the easiest thing to do to just say, yeah, remove gold ammo, but there are implications because there are some tanks that are actually balanced around using gold ammo, and those tanks would become shit overnight. Something like the Chrysler GF, for example, the tank that World of Foch ended up quitting World of Tanks over, because that tank has basically got really, really strong frontal armor, but a shit gun or shit ammunition that can't penetrate itself or just about anything else that it's going to have to fight. And so it's a premium tank that you have to pay real money for, and then you have to pay real money in order to finance the gold ammunition expenditure to make the tank actually playable. It's not. It's the
Unfosh or Surfosh.
yes. There are other examples, not quite as extreme as that tank, but that's the thing. World of Tanks is basically balanced around the use of gold ammo. You couldn't just remove it. You could perhaps modify it, and one of the suggestions I've seen is, okay, give it higher penetration because it did have higher penetration. That was the whole point in using these types of ammunition, but reduce the damage that they do. So, you know, if you want to just throw your checkbook at World of Tanks, then you can do so, but you'll have to throw your checkbook harder at them because it will require more gold ammo to get the same job done, which will make Wargaming happy, and the heavily armoured tanks will be less unhappy because, yeah, they're still going to get gold spammed, but they won't die as quickly when it happens. It's a difficult one to answer, but I think doing something about gold ammo in World of Tanks, it might not remove the gold ammo spam. It might actually make it more more spammy, but it wouldn't have as big an impact, I think, which I think a lot of people would probably maybe not love, but would get used to and learn to deal with. NK 2024, can we get a revisit of some older series like Naval Action, Armoured Warfare, Alien Isolation? You're not getting me to do Alien Isolation again. Nope. Or the Beast Inside. I stopped doing the Beast Inside right before this bit in the mines, where it was basically like Alien Isolation, where there's a ghost that you cannot kill, that kills you as soon as it touches you, and you have to basically just try to avoid it and sneak around. And I just couldn't do it, for exactly the same reasons that I couldn't do Alien Isolation, because I'm a big girl's blouse. I'm really crap with horror games. Naval Action. That was the Age of Sail one, wasn't it? Is that still going? Let me just quickly Google it. Naval Action. Because that was actually quite impressive at first. And then they introduced, yeah, it is still going. It is the one I was thinking of. It is a beautifully detailed game. Um, but it was when they introduced the sandbox element of the open world map that I kind of started losing interest in it. And plus, because I hadn't played in so long, everybody I was going up against was in a Santissimo. And I just kept getting my arse handed to me. Cold Waters, possibly, yeah. Armored Warfare, possibly. I lost interest in Armored Warfare when Obsidian got fired. and they just, because Obsidian were trying to make it not like World of Tanks, which I thought was the whole point in making a competitor to World of Tanks, and they got fired for it, and then the publishers got their own development team on it, and with the intention of making it as much like World of Tanks as they could. And that's more or less when I kind of lost interest in Armored Warfare. But I mean, never say never. I said that I would never go back to War Thunder, and then I kind of did. So maybe, I don't know. Can we get a revisit of some older series games? Possibly. Like I say never. Well, I'm saying never as far as Alien Isolation's concerned. But other games, yeah. And the next question from Plasma Carrot, don't forget Cold Waters. Yeah, exactly. I will probably come back to these games at some point. Actually, speaking of that, people keep saying, have you seen, I think it's called War at Sea, which is the sequel, if you like, to Atlantic Fleet, which was originally a mobile game. And I'm pretty sure War at Sea is also a mobile game, but also available on PC. I keep saying, Jingles, will you take a look at War at Sea? I did download it, install it. I got it the day it came out because I was a big fan of Atlantic Fleet. And I thought, wow, War at Sea would be like Atlantic Fleet, but more detailed. And I was not impressed. I got through the training battles, and it seemed okay. Yeah, like Atlantic Fleet, but with more options. This is not a bad thing. And then I set up a battle where I was in the USS North Carolina against a bunch of Japanese ships. And after 10 minutes, because remember in Atlantic Fleet, the longer that you had your fire director trained on one target, the more accurate your guns got, because that's how it actually works, correcting the fall of shot and so on and so on. After 10 minutes of firing at these Japanese ships with the North Carolina and never landing a shot closer than 1 kilometer from the target, I figured that the game was broken, didn't work, and I should wait until they'd actually fixed it into a playable state. So perhaps I shall, because this was a while ago, maybe, who knows, the game actually works properly now. But that's something, again, that I will probably revisit at some point in the future. Question from Jorda. Given that you have an airsoft/military background, do you have any interest to participate in the 2-3 gun competition in the USA or Europe if and when the pandemic eases? I would definitely like to participate in a gun competition, but I would probably have to own a gun. And I live in the UK, and I don't have a legitimate reason to own a gun, so I would not be granted a license. But I mean, if I lived in the USA, I would be a gun owner. I'm 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 not ashamed to admit it. I'm kind of conflicted. I know that the whole issue of gun control is a really touchy subject in the USA. And here's the thing. I like guns. I wouldn't want a gun for home defense. I wouldn't want an assault rifle to, shoot a burglar because the bullet would go right through the burglar, through the wall behind him, and probably kill somebody on the other side of that. You don't need assault rifles for home defense. You need assault rifles because you like assault rifles. If people would just man up and admit the real reason why they want guns is because they like guns, I would have a lot more respect for them, because I want a gun because I like guns. It's not because I need to defend myself. I don't need to go hunting deer with my bazooka. I just like guns. And if I lived in the USA, I would be a gun owner. I would probably participate in these gun competitions. But unfortunately, I live in the UK, so I can't.
If I may,
You may.
I have a question
Uh-huh.
from Ragnarok. Jingles, your thoughts on re-releasing the Squadron of Ultimate Badasses again for XCOM 2 due to the fact the download link is no longer available?
I wonder if I could. Well, I'm pretty sure even if I were to reinstall the game, I would have to recreate them from scratch. But I mean, I could do that. But there's no reason why you couldn't do that, because I just edited characters in the character editor, which is the same character editor that everybody with XCOM 2 has. So there's no reason why you couldn't do it yourself. I mean, I could install XCOM 2 and go to the trouble of doing it and then sorting out a download link, but it would be a lot faster for you to just recreate it yourself. The videos are all there. You know what they all look like. That was a decent question, but it's sometimes help yourself is the best option. And I think we're almost done with the pre-listed questions. Let's have a quick look over what we got here. Earliest memory with using a computer in general. from Tall Data, not a weeb, from the Gnome clan. I never owned a computer because we were dirt poor and didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. Although my mother, I do remember when I was about 7 years old, my mother somehow managed to get a hold of an Atari VCS gaming console for Christmas, and it was amazing. But it wasn't a computer. But I never actually owned a computer until I bought a Commodore Amiga 500 when I came back from the first Gulf War with 6 months' worth of wages burning a hole in my pocket. Prior to that, it was other people's PCs. I had friends who had, well, not PCs, but well, not just PCs, friends who had like Acorn Electrons or BBC Micros and stuff like that. And the first was in South Africa when I was at boarding school. I had a friend who was a German immigrant. His name was Luke something, can't remember. And he had some kind of Apple. I remember that it, like the monitor and the computer were all one unit. I can't remember what it might have been, an Apple II. I don't know, some kind of very early Apple. This would have been about 1984, to give you some kind of context. And he had some of the most, what you look at now, primitive games that you've ever seen. And I thought they were amazing. And I was hooked. And for years, I must have a computer. I want a computer, but could never afford to get one until I joined the Navy. Started earning my own wages and came back from the first Gulf War with 6 months' worth of back pay sitting in my back pocket, and saw a friend called Gary Dutton who had Shadow of the Beast with parallax scrolling on the Commodore Amiga. I was like, I need to get one of these. Went into town the next day, bought one, and thus started a lifelong passion with computer gaming. And I think we're just about caught up. I'm going to scroll quickly down past the multitude because we're going to have to start knocking this on the head because this has been an hour and a half now, and I do have other stuff to do today. But let's have a... Most of the stuff that I'm looking at now is just reactions to everything that I've been saying. Oh, it's down to 6 Daring class ships, is it? Not 8. Thank you, Helix. Yeah. Talking earlier about the Daring class destroyers. 6 Daring class destroyers to replace 24 Type 42s. Well, that seems fair. Leander Captain Matriol, have you ever been to Newfoundland in Canada? I have never been to Canada. Somehow I always managed to either join a ship after it had come back from Canada or leave a ship before it was going to Canada. Something I've always regretted. But hopefully, once travel restrictions lift, it'll be something that I can actually fix, because I'd love to go to Canada. He's asking, did I know about the Warship sunk by German U-boats off Bell Island? The SS Lord Strathcona. I didn't know specifically about the names of the ships that were sunk. He's talking about torpedoes fired by U-boats that hit the Rose Castle but missed another ship and hit the pier instead, shaking the entire island. Yeah. The U-boat war in the North Atlantic, in particular, because Newfoundland, there's a debate over how you're supposed to pronounce it. Newfoundland, Newfoundland. Only somebody from the place actually apparently knows the proper way to pronounce it. But it was used as a staging port. I've tried to say port and post at the same time, and it came out doubly wrong. It was used as a staging point for the Atlantic convoys, where they would all meet up there, be assigned a convoy commodore, pick up their escorts, and then head into the gap. And I believe not a particularly... you get these... It's understandable, but the sailors there were not entirely popular with the locals because the place doesn't have a huge population. Very small, very limited number of women available, if you know what I mean, and the locals tended to guard them jealousy. And when these 5,000 sailors suddenly come ashore, yeah, stuff got quite heated. What was I thinking about? The place that... Oh, no, it wasn't Newfoundland. So I was thinking about Iceland, that actually got occupied by the Allies, initially by the British, in order to stage maritime patrol aircraft from and prevent it from falling into German hands. And then when the British pulled out and the occupation, because it was an actual, a Western place that was occupied illegally by the Allies during World War II. Also, deeply unpopular, but for slightly different reasons. I'm rambling again, aren't I? I've gone completely off topic. Let's try to get back in. Wargaming from Wirespeed 91. Wargaming, planes will keep being added until morale improves. Yeah, this comes from an old Navy saying, which the executive officer on board HMS Newcastle once actually did. You're doing a main broadcast pipe. Yeah, there, executive officer speaking. The beatings will continue until morale improves. That is all. Because the executive officer on board HMS Newcastle was an absolute legend and was just funny like that. But yeah, planes will keep being added until morale improves. Wargaming 2021. I know. Jingles, if Americans use cookies on computers, do British people use biscuits? This from Machine. I see what you did there, Machine. Oh, here we go. Good question from Streak. What type of music are you actually into, Jingles, and what bands or groups would you suggest? I tend to, because you get people who are only into pop music, or only into disco, or only into death metal, or I'm prepared to give anybody a chance if they at least play their own instruments and write their own stuff. And, you know, if you're not a band, if you're just a singer, at least sing your own stuff without the assistance of an auto tune. So I don't really have any particular type of music that I like, although I am very fond of rock. But I'll listen to just about anything, providing that the people involved know how to play their own instruments and write their own stuff. So I'll listen to, you know, AC/DC. It's one of my favourite bands of all time. Def Leppard. I don't laugh. I think Celine Dion is an amazing singer. And it's because she is an amazing singer. Whether you like her music or not is completely subjective. But she is objectively an amazingly good singer. She has a great voice with a great range. Um, Queen, Freddie Mercury, same. Great voice, great range, and I love Queen. Queen and AC/DC are probably my two biggest musical influences. Um, and there are, I often would get into these arguments with people in the Navy. I'm thinking of this one guy in particular that I was working at the Admiralty interview board with, a young fella, wasn't very old. His nickname was Tex, and he tried to tell me, who was it? I can't remember the name of the singer, but somebody with an objectively good voice, strong voice, wide range, a good singer. Whether you liked listening to their music or not was not the issue. The point was you couldn't say that she was a bad singer because she wasn't. Whether you liked her music or not was entirely up to you. But she was a good singer. And he couldn't get his head around the idea that you could not like something even if you acknowledge that it was technically good. Like the band Rush, for example, have done some amazing songs. Iron Maiden have done some amazing songs. But there's just something about Bruce Dickinson, I think, is an amazing. Bruce Dickinson, for those of you who don't know, was the lead singer of Iron Maiden and also an Olympic class fencer. So, yeah. And a pilot. How did he have the time? But anyway, he has a good voice. He's got a strong voice, powerful voice with a good range, but I didn't like the way his voice sounded. So I could never get into Iron Maiden, despite how good they were. Same thing with Rush. Something about the way the lead singer sounded just rubbed me up the wrong way. Despite the fact that they played all their own instruments, wrote all their own stuff, and were technically good, I just didn't like them. And this Tex kid just couldn't get his head around that concept. But if you don't like them, how can they be good? Tex, you don't understand. There's a difference between subjective and objective. They are objectively good. They are technically proficient. They can play their own instruments. They write good songs. But I don't like the way they sound. Well, that means they're bad. No, it doesn't. It's just young and stupid didn't get it. Anyway, scrolling again down through the questions because we're rapidly approaching the end here. Although I'm not rapidly approaching the end of the questions, but I'm definitely going to have to knock this on the head and get this thing uploaded to YouTube. I don't want to know how big this file's going to be. I've been recording for an hour and 40 minutes now. Jingles, where are those memory enhancing pills? From Dave. I don't know, Dave, I've forgotten. Anyway, they were Rita's pills. And I think she forgot them and left them here. So, Snurven22, what will you do when your annual War Thunder video is 2077? I will clearly have to do a War Thunder Cyberpunk collaboration, won't I? In fact, I think War Thunder already did that. Didn't they do a sort of cyberpunk style Easter thing? April Fool? I'm sure they did. So they've already beaten me to it. It's like War Thunder knows.
I know Forza did a collab with Cyberpunk.
Yeah, that would be amazing. A War Thunder Cyberpunk collab. How many bugs could you fit in? Oh, and Australian train buff, Jingles, have you heard of the game War on the? I think he's talking about War on the Sea. He just forgot to put sea in. By the way, this is something that I get all the time when people send replays in. I look at the email title and it sounds amazing. You know, 8 kills, Confederate, high caliber. And I open up the message and the description of the battle is astonishing. And there's no replay or link to a replay file. I'm like, you got my hopes up and then you let me down. That happens a lot more often than you might think. So it's not just me being crap, okay? Clearly I'm rubbing off on some of you lot. Anyway, I need to get some shopping done. I've got a visit to the butcher planned. I want to buy some lamb shoulder and do that lamb cleftico that I did on Home with a Gnome a couple of months back. Because it was delicious. And I've got some mint sauce to go with it. So I think I'm going to call an end to proceedings here. Grumper is apparently telling me I'm an absolute natural at this Q&A stuff. And he's suggesting that we maybe do this on a semi-regular thing for special events. And you know what, Grumps, I think that is a very good idea, depending on how well this goes. What's going on here at the end? Thanks, Jingles. Yeah. What do you reckon, guys? Should we do this more often than just once every 3 years? I think this would go down quite well. Yeah, more Q&A, definitely. We will make it so. Can't guarantee it'll be every month, but we'll definitely do more of this. Yeah, chat's going crazy. Right, well, I hope you enjoyed it. Grumps, thanks once again for coming up with this idea and organising it. And to all 146 of you here in chat, take care, folks. Stay safe. And I'll catch you next time.